Okay, well, welcome back everybody to another episode of Rocking Midlife, and I'm really excited as we have another brave male that has joined the ranks of interviewees this week, and I'd like to introduce a good friend of mine, Robert Robertson. So welcome, Rob.
Thank you. Interesting.
Yeah, it's
brave
cool.
Guys going into the midlife of all these women.
I know, because Rocking Midlife has mainly kind of been aimed at helping women to this point. But, you know, that's only part of the equation. Men are part of midlife and life in general as well. And I just think it's really brilliant to get some healthy, centered, emotionally in touch with themselves type men as yourself to come on and bridge the gap for us.
Well, thank you. And your podcast is so good. Surely men will be listening to your podcast as well.
Oh, thank you. I certainly hope they will, actually. And that's why I would like to bring on more and more male interviewees because, you know, like I said, we don't live in a vacuum as women. And men go through midlife and men face so much of the same issues that we women face. And it's important that we have these conversations and give them a chance to be inspired and motivated too. So it's great to have you here. But before we go on, I'm just going to read out a little bit of your bio so that people know a little bit about you. So Robert C. Robertson, what's the C stand for? You're going to tell us?
Craig.
Oh, that's right. So, yeah, it wasn't like...
I don't like Craig, but it's there. So
Craig's
we're running with it.
Fine. It's running with it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Robert C. Robertson is an entrepreneur, speaker, and productivity expert specialising in emotional fitness and technology, and how these can combine to create time freedom, resilience, and inner trust. As a founder of unboxedperformance.com, his company has recently grown to a team of 8 people helping people navigate the technology divide. He is the creator of both the Time Freedom Engine and emotional fitness programs. His emotional fitness tools, and my cat has literally just jumped up and moved that. I was doing so well.
Cats are causing mayhem.
His emotional fitness tools help grow emotional understanding, boost self-esteem, and inner trust for more organic free flow of success. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about this whole emotional freedom, emotional fitness tool that you created. So can you give us a nice potted definition of what is it? What is this emotional fitness tool?
Emotional fitness is the degree to which we use our emotions. So if we think of it like a muscle, if a muscle, we don't use it, I know with your background in fitness, if you don't use the muscle, then you don't have the range of movement. It's the same with our emotion. If society generally teaches us we need to be in this positive range of emotion, otherwise we need antidepressants, and we just don't get taught to have the full capacity. So emotional fitness, if you have good emotional fitness, you have tools and techniques to handle the negative emotions and not hide from them, not disown them, block them. So, and real living life to the full is having the full range of emotions and being okay at every aspect. And you can handle, that's ultimate resilience, and you can handle anything.
Oh, that sounds fabulous. Now, this is probably a real generalization, but I find that women tend to be more vocal, more open about expressing emotions. If they're sad, they'll tell you they're sad. They'll cry, they'll express disappointment, and they'll talk these things out. Do you find that there's a real difference, the people you work with, between the men and the women?
Yeah, so women are much more open to the tools that I've developed, and generally better clients, because men, particularly in New Zealand, and we're men and we handle it, we're tough, we've got to handle it, and we're taught to have a facade and a sort of a macho-ness. So that way we traditionally, and it's changing a lot with sports people, and people are dropping that facade, but generally there's that macho-ness.
Yeah.
So the good emotional fitness is around being real and being a male that can be vulnerable. It doesn't mean that I go around crying in public. I do that in private if it's appropriate. But it's having the strength to know who I am and be able to just really live life to the full, and in a male sense of expression of the emotions that I choose, and I have control over the emotions that I choose.
Yeah, yeah. Do you find, though, that men, particularly in the workplace, like you're saying, the macho facade, I mean, probably part of that is part of their survival mechanism in the corporate world too. Got to keep that facade, making sure I look like I'm strong and I'm indestructible and everything. When you're working with corporates, are you able to get behind that with the men? Or
yeah, it's dropping. Like a lot of that's our conditioning. Like we're conditioned a certain thing. Like for me, my father didn't show much emotion, so I sort of followed that, and I I figured unconsciously, I only realised this later, that I wasn't to be loved and accepted. Shouldn't really show much emotion because that's a male stereotype. So you learn all these things and you're conditioned, but that's changing, and it's about being real and authentic and breaking down those barriers to connect with real people, and that's what it's all about. And as professional sports people are great role models now for males. There's a lot more emotion and being real, and so things are changing. It's generations.
That's brilliant. Now you talk about professional sportsmen. We should add, you've been very high up with your sport as well. So give us a little bit of your history about your sport, where you're involved.
I play a lot of sport, and I'm trained as in some sports psychology and do some work as a mental skills coach. I guess if we go really where it started, I at under 12, I represented the region in Mid-Canterbury in soccer and felt well out of my depth, and the same as an 18-year-old for tennis. So my journey is all about, I've had major self-doubt and a lot of low self-esteem and all sorts of, and when I went to university, it was major anxiety because I was this kid from the farm in Methven who didn't understand more than just what I knew. And there was, as a 7-year-old, there was some abuse, sexual abuse as from a farm worker. And so I didn't understand any of this, apart from I knew I had a whole lot of anger and stuff inside, and I just navigated life. And but first, getting the concise version is, at first year at university, major anxiety because I just didn't understand all the stuff, and then depression. And so for 10 years I learned positive thinking. And I thought positive thinking was the answer to everything, because I told all my friends how great positive thinking is, and they told me to get lost and all that stuff. But for 10 years, positive thinking was my thing. And then about 20 years ago, giving away my age, of course.
Oh, come on, I'm older. It's all good.
And I then realised, it was in Australia where I was living, I was on a retreat, and I realised that I had massive anger and all sorts of emotions hidden away because I'd turned everything into a positive in the head. So I could not handle any negative emotions because I was so insecure about who I was. But in the head, I was actually quite comfortable. I was a manager of 50 staff in Sydney in a company, and I'd actually achieved quite a bit of success, as many of us do, living in the head, disconnected emotionally. But we've got this facade, and it was such a facade. Because I couldn't handle anything apart from positivity. So all of a sudden then I realised massive anger, and it was a complete surprise because I was up here. So the last 20 years I've been learning everything I could around emotions and how to integrate emotions and own emotions, and the journey has just out of this world in the last few years.
So if you're living with that type of like disconnect between your head and your emotions and what's really happening, how did that play out in your life? You said you felt anger, like was there tension? Like you mentioned,
what a great
some people will automatically reach for antidepressants if they feel any less than totally positive. Like how did that play out for you?
Well, the 10 years of being Mr. Positive, I was really unrealistic. Because I was in the head and I had these great visions of being a well-known motivational speaker, which has always been the dream around knowing psychology and the sports stuff that I'm starting to do now. I had these dreams, but it was so ungrounded and unrealistic. I would go spouting off because I wasn't grounded energetically. I was all here. And in sport, I had moments of brilliance in rugby and things that, and so I had times of absolute brilliance, but it was just all over the place because it's the self-doubt and all the emotional stuff that was there. Because you don't get what you want in life, you get what your unconscious conditioning and stuff creates. It's just a filter that creates our future and our decisions are all filtered through our emotional stuff. And the brain scientist, Dr. Jill Bob Taylor, explains that our emotions lead our thoughts. So whatever's going on in our head, whether we can do mindfulness and control that, but if we are aware of our emotions and our unconscious stuff and work on the level that I'm talking about with some of the tools, you can get drastic changes in who we are and how we communicate. So
yeah, wow. So I'm sure so many people are already sort of sitting there going, "Wow, is that me? Have I been squashing the real me and just putting on this positive, I'm with it facade?" Or it's a real challenge to go deep, because sometimes going deep means you've got to get uncomfortable for a while, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting looking back on it, because the freedom that I feel now is like a different world and I'm a different person.
Yeah.
But when I reflect back to what it was like, it was, there was that facade, and it was a sort of a scared part of me that never felt comfortable who I was.
Yeah.
But I just played the game because that's all I knew. And that's probably a lot of people know.
Yeah.
And you just do what you do. And it's only now having, I was going to say, gone to the other side. My mother did ask me if I'm gay, but it's not that side. But it's there's the feeling of on the other side of freedom and trust. And today it's all about just being present.
Yeah.
And turning off the head. Because the head wants to look forward, back, and analyse and so forth. And if you're just there, present, the magic happens. And that's
so cool. So for people, I'm going to bring it back to midlife. I'm just reading your thing here again. So, you know, you don't get to midlife, like we were saying before, you don't get to midlife without having some baggage, do you? You know, we've got scars, we've got batterings, we've got a fair bit of experience under our belts. And it's interesting because, you know, I personally believe that we've got a real choice at midlife. We either stay where we're at and just keep doing what we're doing because that's all there is, or we sit there and we pine for what we used to have, or we choose to move forward into what we have now and create the reality that we have going forward. Remembering for midlife, for women in particular, it's a time when the parenting roles and all of those things change, and so you have that future. So how do you think emotional fitness comes into that, going through that thing at midlife, that reinvention, stopping, looking at yourself, crisis, whatever? How does emotional fitness fit in with that?
It's about really being aware of your emotions and knowing a couple of principles. One is that our emotions are feedback, and all emotions are feedback. So in negative emotions, it's changing the association with it. If you think negative emotions, you want to run away from, and but if you look at negative emotions as a chance to heal and release old patterns, if you know how to integrate and use negative emotions without chopping them off.
Right.
So that's the fundamental. And
so it's kind of like if you got a negative emotion, it's not running away from it, but it's actually giving it space to look at what it is, what the root of it is. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Exactly. Our negative emotions want to be healed and released so we're free, because we don't want to be stifled and shut down. So, but it's then understanding how to release those emotions and own the emotions and not run away from them.
So what would your tips be there? So let's say we've got a man or a woman, they're at midlife, they've decided they're going to get real with themselves before they move forward. They know they've got some negative stuff. I mean, obviously you can't give us the whole session in, 30 seconds, but where would they start? What would they do?
So it's appreciating and not running away from emotions, being present. So there's emotional fitness workout, which is a combination of different tools and techniques to handle whenever you're having negative emotions. So first of all, it's being present and accepting your emotions as being valid and part of you, not running away. That's improving your fitness. So you own and be really present with it. Then there's a series of different things. There's emotional surfing, which is a technique developed by Ralph Kushler, who's on Oprah, and that's his main method of integrating emotions, where you feel the emotion, label it, and integrate it, and you go through this surfing. That's one method. The one that my favourite one, and the one that's been big for me for releasing anger and not so much baggage, is emotion unblocking.
Okay.
It's nicknamed de-shitterization, if I can use that term.
Yep.
And it works really well because we all have our shit or negative stuff that comes up. How the technique works, the first thing is you use a command. A lot of the time we feel negative emotions and we're picking up the environment, friends, family, and we're taking on their stuff. So the abbreviated, and again, I used to be really conscious of saying this, but as a male, I don't even think about what I'm saying or analyze it, because the statement is, anything that's not of the highest level of light, I command you leave my body immediately. So you say that assertively to yourself. There's a little bit more that to add to avoid any karmic effects. So you clear your energy. You say that initially, that's the first stage, and then you drop into the emotion. And if you think of so you do this in an area where you can express emotions. So it's only when you're feeling negative you do this, and then you drop into the emotion and you just let it out, the emotion. But here's the golden point. The step is you ask where it's coming from, and you drop down into the emotion and you release more layers. And then you ask, where is it coming from? Or how do I really feel? And you let out more emotion. And you keep doing this until you actually get a release and a shift of all of that emotion. It is the best way of describing it is this is an emotional block that we're releasing. So we're all full of them, and that's what creates our negative emotions. So if you do a lot of this, you stop having negative emotions, essentially. And so how it works is, if you think of it, it's like an iceberg. We're in this happy place, we're doing what we want, and then something happens and we feel negative. So if you think of that as an iceberg, it comes up into the surface. And above the surface, we feel a level of negative emotions. So often we're taught we may cry, release it. For me, there's a lot of anger. So it was hitting a pillow in the bed when I was, back in the days when I was flatting, and just releasing it. If it's sadness, your tears, and then you let out the layers, and then you drop down, and there's shame, and all those things come up. But the iceberg, that's the surface. And if you just do the surface, the baggage drops away and then comes up and visits you again next time you're in that situation. So you have this. But if you do the simple technique of where's it coming from and go down, 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 and let out layers and layers, and if you get to the bottom of the iceberg, which you do, sometimes it can be 10 minutes of crying, sadness, whatever, anger, and then keep going down, down to where it's based. The iceberg is anchored into our psyche. And if you get to the bottom and release the iceberg, gone. So next time you're in that situation that you may have felt triggered or sad, you don't feel sad. So it's an amazing way of de-baggagizing, de-shitterizing, and releasing our stuff you do by yourself. That is so powerful. I've because of my background that I've briefly shared, I've been to psychologists, all sorts of people to look at building my own, letting go of old stuff. Personally, they are about 1/10 as effective as de-shitterization, because you're dealing in deep-seated emotional stuff and you're offloading all our baggage. You do it by yourself and you don't have to pay anybody.
I was going to say, it's cheaper, and you're probably way more authentic because you're still not worrying about someone else judging you, even if they are a professional. You'd still have that
guardedness,
wouldn't you? But when it's just you.
Well, often, I mean, I don't want to criticise, and I won't, other than I was saying, sometimes that's in the head.
Yeah.
When you're talking about stuff, the power is, as I said, if our emotions lead our thoughts, by Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor, the brain scientist. So if we're working at an emotional level, we just stop needing to think or talk about stuff. We can get rapid changes because it's our unconscious stuff and our emotions that create who we are.
Yeah.
And that's why there's some rapid and huge gains in performance by doing that. And so if you melt the whole iceberg,
yeah,
gone. And it's a different level of presence and knowing, because we all have so many icebergs floating around, which comes up. As we know, we attract the same patterns in life, the same relationships, and the same things, because we've got the same icebergs that come up and create our future. So that's the abbreviated way.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I find it really interesting that you have these two sides to your business, which I initially saw as being quite different. The technology systems person and then the emotional fitness. It's a bit like, okay, that's a little weird, but you explained to me just before we started recording how they mesh together. So perhaps you can explain that for people who are listening or watching this. How does a technology guy end up coaching fitness, emotional fitness, and how does that connect?
So my purpose is freedom, or my driver is freedom, because of the real self-doubt and struggles I've had for so much of my life. Then internal freedom and emotions is really my purpose, to help people grow and just feel comfortable who they are, raise their self-esteem. And in my case, it's sports performance, and mental toughness has just gone out of this world recently because of this. So helping people get inner freedom, feel good about who they are, that's the emotional fitness. But technology is the outer freedom. So a lot of the majority of my work is with businesses to get the technology right and integrate all the systems so they have the freedom of stuff and find clients from the marketing viewpoint, and so that they have this flow. It's all about flow. That's the big thing that I'm really talking about with clients and all our team. And so if you get that technology flowing, have everything in the inner flowing, then you have that freedom. So the model is, with businesses, you get the technology right, and then the second layer is the strategy and leadership, and that's where we talk about emotional fitness with corporates, and which is new. It was only before Christmas that a big company that one of New Zealand's it is New Zealand's award-winning PR company that had a session with, it was around strategy and doing the one-page plan tool, but gained so much out of that last year because we went into emotional fitness and talked about all this stuff, and the feedback from everyone was amazing. So
that's brilliant. I just think it's amazing. It's just, it makes sense when you explain it, that those two things go hand in hand. It's just interesting how long it will take corporates to catch on to that. So okay.
Well, they're ready.
Yeah.
The world is changing and people are changing, and it's a matter of today, and this is particularly for your listeners as well, it's just following your intuition, trusting yourself and just going for it. We've all got a unique purpose and we've all got different skills, and it's just listening inside, getting out of all the stuff here.
Yeah.
And just going for it.
You are the third person I've interviewed for this podcast, third in a row, of people saying learning to listen to that little gut voice, your own intuition, that little quiet voice inside you, and not being always swayed by all the exterior voices out there. So it's just amazing that you're number 3. So God's trying to tell me something here.
It's such an important thing. You can make decisions for society, religion, outer stuff, or which is not going to satisfy you. If you listen inside, only you know your right decisions to make, and it's about intuition. And there's real hard scientific research that's proven we have a gut brain and a heart brain and a head brain. So it's understanding and listening, and that's where the magic and the flow happens. Which is it's all about now.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, the way that the world has changed, what with this COVID-19 crisis, but the way it's made us have to react and relearn. I mean, the world's never going to be what it was. It's going to be always slightly different going forward, and hopefully it's causing people, midlifers in particular, to look at the whole picture, that if they want to go forward and reinvent and everything, that they're also prepared to go deep inside as part of that process.
Yeah, because the world is changing. And because the world's changing, we need to change. Otherwise, we're a victim of it. Because unless we proactively change, then things are changing outside of us, so we are left behind. So the people that are doing well at the moment are the people that are proactively listening inside, making decisions and breaking through barriers to change. Those that are struggling are looking outside and say, well, when's it going to get back to normal? Well, it's not. It's a matter of just going forward. And sure, we're going to have challenges, we're going to have fears, but it's then just going forward and doing it. And
I like that. It takes you, even if you are still restricted with what you can or can't do, it still changes that. It's that subtle shift in your own psyche that you're not the victim anymore, just waiting for things to happen to you, that you are taking.
That is the key. I was to say a real example is that's always been, I've been always really aware of everyone's opinion and a bit scared to do certain things because, what will people think?
I've been guilty of that one,
As I've grown with lots of de-shitterization, then there's just a different level of presence and knowing. And it's a connection without the baggage. So if you have that connection to just be present, without all the stuff, you just make decisions from a different place. And the big thing for me has been in sports, how it is changing mental toughness. But I play a lot of tennis, and I used to be a professional coach overseas in the US, but I was never a great player, which caused some sort of doubt in me. But over the last few years in the national rankings, people at our tennis club can't understand what I'm doing because I'm just racing up the national rankings and my whole game is improving at such an abnormal level and sort of being the first seed in our club champs from being sort of about the middle of the club only a few years ago is just out of this. It's the feeling. I used to look at the top players and think, I'd so love to be one of the top players in the club. And now, I was going to say strutting around. Hopefully I'm not strutting. Hopefully there's a bit of modesty there. But just you're
walking in that confidence.
It's a different level of ownership and feeling of satisfaction to know people are looking at you as, I was going to say one of the top dogs, but just looking at you and you're at that level, which I'd always dreamed of. And that's the outcome of this, is the more you let go of our stuff and just under pressure, you don't have that baggage that I used to have under pressure in tight tennis games that I would not play as well, because that's what I'm very passionate about sports, and because if you want to play sport well, you don't think, it's your instinct, it's your muscle memory that does it, and as soon as you go into the head and start thinking, then you lose the moment and the in the zone flow. So it's about just being present and connecting to without all those icebergs floating around.
Isn't that amazing that by working on your emotions and getting rid of stuff that you can improve your physical performance in sport? It's quite amazing. I mean, I wrote about some of that in my book, 21 Hacks, when I was talking about how they train they train high performing athletes, with mental techniques and visualization and self-efficacy and all that business. And it's just incredible, the mind-body connection, and it's just so powerful. But it's not just for athletes, is it, either? It's for everyday people. Just if you can clear the mind and get rid of all the yuck, like you're saying, get rid of all the stuff that's down, it can just improve your life on so many levels, not just on a tennis court, but because you change your whole self-esteem. Because our self-esteem is made up of our unconscious programming, and the more emotional blocks and all this baggage that sits there, then the more negativity that we have about ourselves. And I don't necessarily have a particularly high self-esteem now, but I used to look in the mirror and never be really that comfortable with who I was at an emotional level. When I was in that 10 years of Mr. Positive, in my head I'd turned everything to positive and I thought I was pretty okay. But the reality and emotionally, until recently, as I've debaggagized and just got really present to who I am, now I feel okay
about who I am, which is a whole different energy and a whole different being.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as just offloading our stuff, because our emotions create every aspect of our being.
Yeah.
And there's major influences. And there's a top doctor that says cancer is cured by releasing our emotional baggage or hate.
Wow.
And so there's a real link to our emotions, our health. And I know my body is changing at the moment with as I've released some stuff around the base chakra and all sorts of stuff. But probably a really good example also of this whole in sport. Had 6 weeks off from playing tennis. And I'm trained in sports psychology and work with athletes, but I've never been big on visualization because that was sort of seemed to me too much mind stuff.
Yeah.
So 6 weeks of not playing, and then I go out to the tennis court last week, and then I've been working on my serve and for a few years, and there's one thing that I hadn't quite done right with the way I put my feet. And all of a sudden, after not playing, and I didn't really visualize it or anything, but I just knew consciously, all of a sudden the feet has just gone in the right place, because I've done in 6 weeks so much de-shitterization and reprogramming of my stuff that I'm actually a different person 6 weeks later. And it just happened. Well, I did visualize it a couple of times in 6 weeks, but it's amazing because our inner stuff creates our outer reality. That's no...
Absolutely, no. Say that again. I want people to catch that one.
Our inner stuff creates our outer reality. And we had this real debate with close friends on Saturday night. Boys get together after our 6 weeks of a lockdown and getting together, and they were saying something they'd noticed because I hadn't been sleeping much, and they were really worried about that I wasn't sleeping much, and which I'll go through phases with... But anyway, the point is that I was explaining that I'm open to all feedback, but if all aspects of my life is flowing and I'm feeling good about it, I'll change that habit and sleep more. Well, it's a phase I go through of sleep, when there's lots happening in business, and I do meditation, get really present and do various things and don't sleep much, but I just go for it. Then as I said to them, if there's really obstacles or problems, then that's feedback. I will change. But at the moment, I'm just listening. And there's phases where I sleep for 3 hours for a week, and that's fine. And so it's our outer is always feedback. If we're having, like for most of my life until recently, had lots of challenges and things in life, because that's what my inner reflected. But the more you let go of, and the more you're present and just clear out the old stuff, the outer that comes and shows you is the magic, because amazing synchronicity, and the universe is conspiring to support me all the time, which I sometimes pinch myself at what's occurred in business, but it's our stuff. If we stop and work on ourselves, and energetically there's less need to be going in and debaggagizing, because if we look forward and are really clear about our outcomes, what we want, there is less need to go back and do some of the stuff that I'm talking about, because things are changing so quickly if you're really clear about the outcomes. And so if you're clear about your purpose, what you're on this planet, we all have unique talents and we're all different. If we're clear of what our purpose is, driven by a vision to impact people, and now if we just focus on that vision, there's less need to do this. But if you combine the two, you can just supercharge yourself ahead to conquer some magical things, because that's what the world and energy is changing so much on this planet at the moment.
Oh, that's fantastic. You're so passionate when you're talking about it. So I'm just sitting back listening going, wow. Oh, that's brilliant. So, Rob, that's just been brilliant. You've really covered some really fascinating sort of, layers to how we operate and how we can do so much better. And I love how it segues beautifully with reinvention at midlife too, just really as we look at ourselves and look at our lives and reflect on what's gone past, before we move forward, that getting rid of all that baggage and, dealing with it for once and for all can be such a major key in reinventing and moving forward, and obviously just as important for men as for women.
Yeah, so, can I add?
Yeah.
Over the last 6 weeks, I've had a lot of growth through the pain.
Yeah.
So there's been triggers, and because I'm doing so much at times, and I feel sadness, I feel anger. But every time I feel that, I drop into it, I own it, and go down and release it.
Yeah.
So it's not about, while my life has been going incredibly, it's not to say that I don't have low moments.
Yeah.
Because I do. And you go through phases, but those low moments are not long moments, because you drop into it and use the technique. Well, there's a combination of techniques.
Yeah.
But the main one that I talked about is unblocking. And then it's, so as you say, I'm not saying it's a bed of roses.
Yeah.
But it's an amazing journey, because the more you change the association of negative stuff with being negative and owning it as being a growth and a healing. And when you're dropping into this emotions of anger and sadness and all this, it's not actually fun doing it. But if you keep reminding yourself, it's healing.
Yeah.
It's digging out the manure, clearing it out, getting it out of our system, and it wants to come out. But if it's an emotion, how does it get out? It can't be thought out. It's out by expressing our emotions. So that's why we just let out our emotions and drop down, and we don't have to stop and think about it. We just let it out. And that's the magic of how quickly you can change and grow.
I can imagine too, once you've done that process a number of times and gotten more used to it, you become less scared of your feelings too. Instead of, I'm feeling really horrible at the moment, I better push that aside so I can get on and, look like I've got it all together. Or I feel, women I know in particular, we feel guilty if we feel anger or resentment or something. And you tend to squash those negative things because, that's just not right. And I think it's really healthy that we stop and we acknowledge those things. And like you said right from the beginning, that we don't immediately then have to reach for a medication to numb those feelings, because we're not scared of them anymore. We allow ourselves to feel them, but we move through them. We don't stay in them. We move through.
Anger is a very good emotion if you associate it with change. Because often people don't change unless they get angry and break habits. So anger is a powerful change mechanism. So if you're feeling yourself get angry, then you look at what's the meaning here, and it's going to change neurons in the brain by reprogramming yourself. And if anger is associated with change, because it's really a powerful way of changing and evolving, because we're human beings. We get angry because we're not happy with, so we've got to change things. So it's just feedback. Emotions are feedback to help it evolve. And and under it often is shame and all sorts of other things, but just whether it be male or, males are good at anger, but it's something that is a work on for people.
Oh, that's been great. Just so much gold in there. I really appreciated it, Rob. So just for anyone listening or watching this episode, we're going to have Rob's links and some of his points in the show notes. So please, if you want to know more, reach out, get in touch with him. And, particularly if you're in the corporate world and you want to look at your systems but take it deeper than just systems, Rob's certainly the person to talk to. And, Rob, thank you so much for being on today. That's been absolutely fascinating. And I'm sure it will have really spoken to someone out there about, not being scared to embrace and face those emotions. So thank you.
Complete pleasure, Kat. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Okay, thank you. And everyone have a rocking midlife.